Good evening to everyone. We will begin shortly.
Hypr academics will not be tutoring this year. What? Hold up, not so fast. It's not quite like that. The current pandemic has changed a lot of things, and our medical education was not spared. Therefore, as the dynamic phase of the pandemic and the medical education changes, so too must we demonstrate our malleability and our ability to evolve to solve emerging needs. In pursuit of that, we have, over the last few months, spent a great deal of time consulting with medical professionals, faculty, companies in other jurisdictions, and most importantly, many of you students. These consultations have concluded that traditional tutoring cannot work. Well, at least not alone. With the newly introduced access to your online classes and recordings, it gives us at Hypr Academics more reason to encourage you to attend your lectures and watch recordings, as the University of the West Indies remains the #1 authority on content for your exams. Therefore, here is the formula that we have devised. We've developed the Hypr community, a learning platform like never seen before in these parts, bringing together the convenience and familiarity of social media and a powerful learning management system. This platform will see students networking with consultants, residents, other doctors, other professionals, and other students from across the region. Students will all have free access to groups and forums dedicated to various courses, all semester long. We have collaborated with a team of medical students and doctors to source and create academic content specific to the UE syllabus, which we will deliver via our Hypr videos. We expect that these videos will bridge the gap that exists with other such offerings that do not hit the nail right on the head where the UE syllabus and Caribbean epidemiological data are concerned. These videos will be synchronized with review quizzes, exam simulations, and textual information and reference materials to set you on the right track to success. As you do this, links will direct you to groups and forums where discussions will ensue on core topics, except that it will foster 24-hour access to clarification from members and not be limited to the boundaries of a 2-hour paid tutorial. Each week, we will facilitate 2 sessions. But wait, did I not say that we will not be tutoring this year? Well, as part of our renewed approach, these 2 sessions a week will cover high-yield content and topics or aspects of topics that you have issues with. Therefore, each week, students will have the opportunity to tell us exactly what they want to gain from these sessions. Isn't that amazing? Essentially, Hypr Academics is prepared to be that 24 hours, 7 days, 12 months companion on your academic journey. We will provide you with tips, academic counseling, follow up on your study progress, and help you maintain that focus as you grapple, like us, with the realities of the COVID-19 pandemic. We have established a medical podcast where we hope to connect, educate, entertain, and advocate. We encourage you to listen on all podcast platforms as well as on our website, as we have exciting things in store for you. We have no doubt that this year will be a rewarding one for you. And with us, you have absolutely nothing to worry about. Join the Hypr community at www.hyprcommunity.com. Follow us on social media at Hypr Academics and let us help you succeed. After all, your success is our mission.
Welcome to Hypr Community. Hypr Community is a social learning network. It brings together the power and convenience of social media and superimposes it onto a learning management system. For most of you, it will be easy to recognize how similar the community's features are to your favorite social media sites, except we have dedicated this website to facilitate learning in a comfortable and familiar setting. Standard features of Hypr Community include posting to your timeline, private messaging, following other users, and connecting. Users will be able to create private and public groups and forums to join others that match their individual goals for connectivity and learning. We are excited to be partnering with faculties, consultants, residents, doctors, and other professionals to bring you groups and live topical forums that provide rich content that are moderated by the best in each field, providing second to none information for your benefit. Hypr Community will foster networking that will bring together faculties, local students, regional students, and professionals onto a platform dedicated solely to your success. Best of all, it is free for all students. Go now to www.hyprcommunity.com and sign up today. Hypr Community, learn, grow together. Hypr Community is brought to you by Hypr Academics Jamaica Limited. Well,
Good evening, guys. My name is Xavier Brown, a fourth-year medical student at the University of the West Indies Mona campus, and a director and senior tutor here at Hypr Academics Limited. It gives me great pleasure to actually welcome you guys to day 2 of our anniversary webinar series. And we actually had a great time yesterday with Drs. Joel Wright and Anthony Alexander. So I just want to thank everyone who showed up yesterday and today via Zoom and YouTube. And we look forward to the discussions we'll be having with Dr. Rochelle Smith, who is speaking on pursuing residency in the UK. Just a reminder, similar to yesterday, to just save your questions towards the end, and Devon will deal with that portion of it. So Devon.
Thank you so much, Xavier. Good evening to everyone. I am happy again to welcome all of you to this second night of our webinar series. It is my distinguished pleasure to introduce to all of us this evening the speaker, the lone speaker this evening, Dr. Rochelle Smith. Dr. Rochelle Smith is a proud British Jamaican alumnus of the University of the West Indies, where she graduated in 2019 as the Faculty of Medical Sciences valedictorian. She has a passion for teaching, evident by her years of tutoring hundreds of students, both as a student herself and while working full-time as a medical doctor. Dr. Smith is also the CEO of Futurum Medical Supplies Limited, and she has been recently appointed a director of Hypr Academics Jamaica Limited. Without further ado, I want to welcome Dr. Rochelle Smith as she shares with us this evening on pursuing residency in the United Kingdom.
So good evening, everybody. I hope you can see me as my small little icon in the bottom. So I'm really happy to be part of this today. Been looking forward to this for a good while. Hopefully I'll be able to shed some light and answer the questions that everybody has burning about residency options beyond just doing MBBS. I know we have doctors who just finished MBBS or just completing MBBS, as well as we have many other people who are a little bit uncertain about what to do next. So I'm here to shed some light on that. So some bits about me for the people who don't know me. So I graduated in 2019. I was the valedictorian of that year. Some little highlighting photos here. So I was actually the president of UWIS, that's UWIS Surgical Society, back in 2014 through to 2016. Here's a picture of some of my happy days in medical school. This is actually during my third year surgical rotation at Cornwall Regional Hospital. And then we have me giving my valedictory address in 2019. So since then, since graduating, I've been working at the University Hospital of West Indies. I worked first as an intern and then as an SHO. I left the institution in January of this year. I had a baby in April of this year. And I'm getting ready to start working in the National Health Service in England, starting on the 4th of August. So that's just a little bit about me. The whole point of this is to give you the information about how to go about coming to the UK, right? I'm going to talk about the PLAB exam, which is not to enter into residency, but I'll shed some more light on that shortly. But I'll also give you all the information about how to go about going through the information to find out how to go about doing residency as well. So I have all that information for you tonight. So yeah, we have a lot of things to get through, and I hope you have your pen and paper and that you are ready for everything that I have to offer for you guys tonight. Okay, so getting started, what do we need to do? So when you're getting ready, so this is after you finish MBBS, because PLAB, unlike USMLE, it's something that you do. You have to have obtained your primary medical qualification, which is for us is MBBS. Okay, so the first thing you need to do is that you need to register with the General Medical Council or the GMC in the UK. So creating a registration account and having a reference number is free. So you fill out the necessary pages and you get given a reference number, you create a password, and you have your own portal, your own account. So before you can get to the point where you book your PLAB exam, you're going to require verification that you can speak English. So on speaking to the GMC, they recognize that Jamaica is an English-speaking Caribbean country. They recognize that University of the West Indies Mona campus, I know we have people from other campuses, but University of the West Indies Mona campus is recognized as, you know, one of the only medical schools in Jamaica. So, but they didn't recognize that the course would be written and spoken in English, which I found quite strange, but it seems to be there under their system at the moment. So there's nothing really you can do about that. So back in the past, many people would end up doing these different exams to prove that you have proficiency in English. So those are the IELTS exam that you see in bullet point 4, or OET, which is more recent. So the IELTS exam, that is the International English Language Testing System, which I will give you more information about. And then you also have the occupational English test. And I've put the costs there as a reference because I don't know how long they're going to continue to accept the English proficiency letter. They may make occupational English test mandatory. So it's kind of a try and get this done sooner rather than later kind of thing. So the English proficiency letter just costs $6. So it's actually 1,000 Jamaican dollars, and it's done by the Faculty of Medical Sciences. Essentially, it's a letter that says that the degree was taught solely in English. So I created a template back when I was applying, when I found out that we could do the template and send the letter instead of doing the IELTS or the OET, because I found it quite ridiculous that they were trying to make me spend more money to do these tests, which I was not going to do. So I created the template, which is available at the Faculty of Medical Sciences, and I'll tell you how to go about that when I get to it. The other thing that you require is verification of your program completion. So that's essentially the faculty saying you did MBBS at UE and we accept that you did MBBS at UE. That's literally it. That costs about 3,000 Jamaican dollars, and again, payable at the Dean's office. So PLAB, for those who don't know, is split into 2 parts. So you have part 1, which is a 180 question MCQ, which lasts for about 3 hours at the moment. The cost of that, I've quoted in US dollars, is 330 US dollars. And I've put some important points here. So make sure you select your dates carefully. It's only offered 4 times a year. So make sure that you're not selecting a date that you don't think you will be ready by. As was said in the presentation yesterday on USMLE, for those who have tuned into both of our parts of the lecture series for the anniversary, you don't need to go back to your books for MBBS. You don't need to do that. You need to build on the knowledge base that you have, okay? So if you know that there are parts that you're weak in, you may need to do some extra reading surrounding that, depending on what your preparation was like for MBBS and how long ago you did MBBS. Because, you know, naturally, as you start to work and you're doing stuff, some information that you were extremely sharp on when you finish MBBS, remember, MBBS is as smart as you're probably ever going to be on multiple areas. But beyond then, you know, you learn more about certain things and kind of filter out the rest of other stuff, right? That happens to everybody. You're not expected to remember absolutely everything. So you're going to build on that base knowledge. So you're gonna need to practice how the questions are asked. So for me, it was more doing question banks and really putting myself through my paces to try and understand how it is that the questions are written, so that you can recognize what kind of answers. It's just like doing MBBS, you know, trying to practice through questions or scenarios so that you, when you're presented with those at another stage and phase, you know exactly what it's asking about and what is expected of you. So your average preparation time for part 1 is about 3 to 5 months. I finished MBBS, we finished MBBS around June in 2019. I was set to sit PLAB at the end of June, but there was no space for that sitting. So I ended up sitting in the next one, which was in November of 2019. So I had actually co-studied for MBBS as well as for PLAB because the questions are extremely similar. We're very lucky that MBBS within the UE system, whether that is at Mona, Cave Hill, any of the campuses, it's based on the English system. So therefore, your translation into English-based, when I mean English-based, I mean English exams, is pretty much seamless because it's essentially like doing the same exam over again. So I would say, yeah, preparation time is around 3 to 5 months. But as I said, I co-studied for mine, and then because my exam was pushed later, I just continued to do the questions over and over and over again. For part 2 now, it's more expensive. It's an OSCE exam, which we're not unfamiliar with. And the preparation time is around 3 to 4 months. So once I sat my PLAB 1 and got confirmation that I had passed PLAB 1 in December of 2019, I was set to sit PLAB 2 in March of 2020. And naturally, you know, given the whole coronavirus pandemic, essentially my exam was postponed by the General Medical Council monthly from March to April, April to May, May to June, until I was able to sit my exam in October of 2020. Essentially, it was because they were trying to figure out how they were going to do it socially distant and sanitizing stations, etc. Because prior to this, you would have actual patients that you would be examining. But when I did it, I was examining mainly mannequins, which they could obviously wipe clean and disinfect between patients. So yeah, that's a general overview of where you're starting at and what things you need to start getting together if that's what you're if you're thinking about doing PLAB. So this is just some screenshots essentially from the GMC website, which is showing you the things that you will, the kind of information you will be required to place in the portal when you're creating your account. So it's simple stuff: email address, date of birth, gender, names, all of those things. Right. After that, you have ethnicity, religion, belief, sexual orientation, and you will also talk about whether you have any disabilities or not. So actually the UK is fairly diverse, and they have to go through this diversification to ensure that they're offering equal opportunities to many different people of different backgrounds. So you'll see here there's multiple things such as problems with mobility, with hearing, etc. So any of those things, you know, if you have a speech impairment or impediment, such as having a stutter or a stammer or whatever, you can click those things and it won't be negative towards your application. It's just so that they have that diversification information to ensure that they're offering equal opportunities to people of different backgrounds. You would also put your address, and then you would go into your nationality and your passport information. So you put in your Jamaican passport, your Bayesian passport, whatever it is that you have. Self-explanatory. After that, now you would end up having to put in your medical qualification. So once you pick your country, you have this, I don't know if you can see, but on where it says awarding body, there's a small little yellow box to the right-hand side. So once you are from an accredited university, so once you put in Jamaica and you click on that, the only university that comes up is University of the West Indies. And then from under qualification, the only qualification that comes under that is MBBS. All right, so some people who may be tuning into this, who go to other medical schools, you need to ensure that your medical school is accredited, or in which country is it accredited or attached to, so that you can put it as your medical qualification. Otherwise, you won't be able to, if it's not on the recognized list from the GMC, you won't be able to register. You talk about how long your period of study was and if you studied at any other medical school. Okay, so English proficiency letter. So essentially, this is taken straight from my English proficiency letter, of which there is a template, so you don't have to copy or scribble this down or anything like that. There is a template which is ready at the Dean's offices at the Faculty of Medical Sciences, which I've created. All you have to do is, this is what it's saying. All the course was taught in English, 75% of clinical interaction and everything was in English, and then you literally just supply the faculty with the date that you completed your degree. So it's usually in June. Given COVID and everything, it might be a little bit different, but it's usually in June time, and you supply that with to the faculty to put that information in there. So prior to COVID, you used to have to submit this letter along with this letter, which is basically saying that you didn't do IELTS or OET and you have an exemption because your course was taught in English. So you would supply these two letters together. And you used to have to send them as hard copies, right? So to the GMC. So that obviously came with its own shipping costs and all those things. But luckily now, given COVID, thank goodness, they're accepting scanned copies, certified, I think it's certified scanned copies of these things. So you no longer have to foot the bill to send these documents as originals to the GMC. So once you've started making your profile, you'll be given a reference number, and you essentially put your reference number in the subject and you send these documents to them. So why am I talking so much about this? It's because otherwise you're going to have to do these other exams, okay? So the IELTS exam, as I went through before, this information is all here for you in the event that they no longer accept that English proficiency letter, which is unlikely, but I put this information in here anyway. Essentially, the IELTS, you're showing that you can read, listen, write, and speak in English. It's a one-day testing. You are scored based on your ability, because there are some people who go to UE who, English may not be their first language, so they may end up having to do this anyway. So yeah, you have to score a minimum of 7 in each parts of the paper with an overall score of average of at least 7.5. It's offered in multiple different places, and it's also accepted for different things as well, not just for PLAB. Okay, so this is just more information, just saying what kind of testing actually takes place in terms of the listening, reading, writing, and speaking. I won't spend a lot of time on this, but all of this information is available online. So the OET, however, in contrast to the IELTS, is that it's literally based on healthcare scenarios as opposed to just general reading and writing in English. Again, requires you to score at least a B average within each paper, and it's again tested on one day, and it's offered in it's accepted by many other regulatory bodies. If you're not looking to the UK but you're looking to places like Australia or New Zealand or those other places, you can also use OET for that. So you may choose to invest and do that test because you have other ambitions for yourself. Okay, again, the information in terms of the outline of the exam is also here. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on it because, as I said, you should be able to use the English proficiency letter as an exemption. So this is just giving you an overview of where you need to be. Remember, you need to be in that 7.5 range or above for the IELTS, OET of B or above, as well as your average. So let's talk a bit about the scheduling of the exams. So unlike USMLE, you cannot do part 2, then part 1. You have to do them in order. So essentially, you're going to do the MCQs, which is testing all of your academic knowledge. And then you're doing your part 2, which is the OSCE, which is testing your clinical knowledge as well as your ability to be able to communicate with patients and family members, etc. And it's done in that way for a reason. So simple answer, no. So when are the tests available? As I mentioned slightly already, part 1 is offered 4 times a year. The dates from this year is February, May, August, and November. You'll have to check the GMC website every year to see when it is available. When you're applying as an international graduate, you have different closing off dates. So do pay attention on the website as to when the closing date is for applications for that round. And it all depends on how many people are applying for that. At the moment, the issue I know some people who were trying to go for the August date, but weren't able to do that, have to go for November or even into next year, because obviously with COVID, everything has been pushed back, because this is an exam that's not done online. It's a paper that you come in and do. So you have to go to a certified test center, of which there are only a few of those. There is no test center within Jamaica or the English-speaking Caribbean. The closest one is in Canada, which is where I sat mine. But obviously for some persons, it requires you to then have a Canadian visa, which not everybody will have or have the money to be able to get. You may look towards, since it takes you about 3 months to prepare for each exam, you may look to doing a visiting visa, which is open for 6 months. Sit your PLAB part 1, hopefully pass that, and then use the same visa to be able to travel to the UK again to sit your part 2 exam. So the part 2 exam is available all year round. There are certain blocks within each month as to when that is offered, but for that you do have to travel to the UK to do it. It's done at kind of, what do you call it, a test center, which essentially is making it standardized. If you were to offer in multiple different countries, you have no idea what kind of patients would be there. It wouldn't be able to be standardized, just a bit like MBBS, you know, they have to find, or even spotters, when you did anatomy spotters, they have to have three of each specimen to be able to make it a standardized exam kind of thing. So they do only offer that at their purpose-built test center, which is in Manchester. And it's one day, you come in at a specific time, you do your exam and you leave. So I did that in October of last year. So you have up to 4 attempts of each part. So once you're going to do part 1, you're going to attempt it and hopefully pass on the first time. But if not, you have up to 3 more attempts, and both things are pass fail. So you do get a score, right? But that's mainly for you to look and see how well you did or how poorly you did or whatever. It's more important when you've not passed, I'm sure, because then you can look back and see how badly you didn't pass or how close you were to passing. For the part 1, it's on a curve. So, you know, if multiple people do very well on that day, the curve obviously shifts, and so the pass mark is higher. For part 2, it's standardized. Once you pass a certain amount of stations, you will pass part 2. When I did my OSCE, obviously it was in the middle of the COVID pandemic, so there was less stations than there usually is, and there weren't that many examination stations as well. So those were the changes really because of COVID, and I don't know whether they will continue with that or whether they will revert back to the original. I think it's 22 stations or 20 stations. I think I had 15 for mine. They removed some of the examination stations because they couldn't have people there for the COVID issue. But you can find all of this information on the GMC PLAB blueprint, which is available on the GMC website if you want more information on that. So how do you study for PLAB? So as I said before, you want to build on your knowledge base. Wherever you were at the end of MBBS, remember that's as much information as you're ever gonna likely have in your life, okay? So for part 1, myself personally, I just used question banks, and I had a few books, but they were, as most textbooks are, they were outdated by the time I was using them, but it was good to kind of use them to see the format of the questions. So in terms of the question banks, I've listed 3 here, which are very good ones. I only used Plabbable and Past Medicine. I initially bought the Past Medicine subscription question bank, but I actually found that Plabbable was probably the better of the 2, because Plabbable had an app which I could use whether online or not, meaning attached to Wi-Fi or not, and it would save all of my responses. So I could do it on the go. I was an intern at the time, so I used it when, you know, I had downtime and stuff like that, you would practice the questions constantly on the go. And it's split into, you know, your topics. So you have medicine, which is then split under cardiology, nephrology, neurology, etc., etc. And in addition to that, you get direct feedback. So once you're doing your questions, it will tell you what the answer is, and there is extensive information and explanation underneath as to why the answer is what it is, as well as further reading if you need to educate yourself a bit more about stuff which is related to specific policies or a good practice within the NHS, because that's what it's based on. You're essentially trying to create a safe doctor who's ready to work in the NHS. For part 2 now, it's a practical based exam, so it's always handy if you have more than one person who you know who is also sitting the exam as well, so you can practice through scenarios, etc. Because of the COVID thing and the persons that I was initially going to be working with, they decided not to sit PLAB in that year, but I kind of didn't have that choice. I wanted to make sure I got it out of the way. So what I did instead is that I signed up for a practice course, which is not essential. I found it mild to moderately helpful, more so from the fact that they usually go through anticipated or expected scenarios based on trends of the exam. And I found that very helpful because some of those scenarios did come back in the exam. In addition to that, you can also find other study partners all over the world, whether it's, you know, I had a study partner who was in Pakistan. The timing is a little bit difficult in terms of the time differences. But it's not impossible. So it's really a practice thing. And I found that from an examination counseling point of view, as an intern or a senior house officer, or just as a doctor in general, working in Jamaica or any of the different countries, we kind of do this stuff on a daily basis. So it's not something completely new. It's just to look back at the way we grade those things in MBBS, and that is kind of very, very similar in terms of the things that are important. But for the part 2, it's more about, do you listen to the patient? Do you alleviate their concerns? It's very much communication more so than demonstrating all of your academic knowledge. So when you're there with a patient's relative, you want to be explaining it in layman's terms. You don't want to be explaining things with a whole load of medical jargon, because that will mark you down. So I've listed again here some places that offer practice courses. What I found most helpful with the practice courses is that I got to practice on the mannequins themselves. So I knew what to expect when I went into those stations, when I went into the exam. That was really the most helpful part out of it. So what about visas? So as you can probably hear from my accent, I am from the UK. I grew up in the UK, but I moved to Jamaica in 2013 to pursue medicine and to help my grandparents who had just retired. So for me, the only difference that made was merely just having the passport and the national insurance number already. Everything else in the application, they treat me as a foreign medical graduate because I graduated from a place outside of the UK and EU. So it didn't really confer that much of an advantage, to be honest. So I still had to go through the whole process like everybody else, except for didn't need a visa. So in terms of the different visas, just the information, just to drop it here, there's a visiting visa, but there is also a working visa or a doctor and healthcare worker visa. So in terms of the visiting visa, that's the best one for you to get to do your exam, because you won't be able to get a working visa because you won't have any job offer, which you are required to have to get that visa. You have a 6-month, 2-year, or 5-year available. It really depends on you personally. I would say try and do the 6-month one, even though the other 2 are probably better economical choices long term. If you do get into a program over in the UK, you're going to want to upgrade your visa. So you don't want to have a pay for a 5-year visiting visa, but then after that 6 months or a year of completing your exams, you then have to upgrade to do work. So I would suggest you doing the visiting visa. In terms of trying to get things in the UK is very it's a bureaucratic system. So you need to have all your P's and Q's and dot your I's and your T and cross your T's. You need to show financial evidence for at least 3 months of stable income, or that you have enough to support your stay. And all of that information can be found on the gov.uk website related to the visa application. So they will tell you how much you need to demonstrate that you have. In terms of your the working visa, it lasts up to 5 years. However, it can be extended depending on whether you had to delay your program or had to take time out for whatever reason. Sorry, excuse me, person AJ, could you please mute your mic? Somebody who just entered. Thank you. And what's important about the working visa is that obviously you're working in the NHS, so you then don't have to pay this thing called a healthcare surcharge, which is essentially paying to be able to use the NHS services. They recognize you're a healthcare worker working in the healthcare profession. The least they could do is allow you to access the healthcare facilities. So that's a benefit as well. Okay. So what's the cost tally? So I saw yesterday when we were looking at the USMLE one that they were talking about kind of showing you financially about how much it's going to cost you. I tried to make it as comprehensive as possible, including how much it's going to cost you for visas, flights, etc. Naturally, accommodation, I can't put a price on that because I don't know. You may have family, you may have friends who will be able to put you up for, you know, the week, 2 weeks while you come to do your exam. But ballpark figure is around $3,000 US, and that's for just the PLAB exams, including your travel and visas to those places. So it's significantly more affordable than USMLE. But there are some other factors as well. Remember, USMLE is allowing you to enter a residency program. PLAB is allowing you to operate at the level of a senior house officer. That's what the entry level, it's internship SHO, right? So you can enter at a SHO level, and you can also enter just immediately above that as well in what we call a non-training post. So there's a post before you do residency, depending on your experience. So if you've completed internship and SHO and you have evidence of that, you can apply for something above the level of that, but you cannot enter the residency program until you do the residency exams. So that's a distinction that I wanted to make between USMLE and PLAB. However, based on the newest information out of Royal College of Physicians, you can use PLAB once, because PLAB is an exam to allow you to get GMC licensing. Once you have GMC licensing, you are then eligible to be able to do a fellowship in the UK. So you could come for a year, 2 years, 3 years after you finish your DM program in whichever country you're in, and you could do a fellowship in the UK in your subspecialty. So that's another option. So you could do the PLAB from you finish medical school, and you can essentially put down your registration license until you are ready to go and do a fellowship. So you don't have to go to the UK straight after you finish MBBS or after internship or even after SHO. You could put down that until you want to do a fellowship in the future. So that's a benefit of getting it out of the way earlier, because the Royal College exams are significantly more expensive, significantly more taxing, and harder to study for, especially when you have the work commitments that you may have. Okay, so after you finish PLAB, what do you do next? So you then apply for your GMC full registration, which costs $270 US. It's around 190 pounds, 195 pounds, which is a discounted first year registration. Beyond that point, it is around £300 to £400 per year to keep your registration. So that's something that you need to keep in mind. Obviously, if you're working and you're in a 3, 4, 5 year residency program, if you have the money to be able to put down and spend to keep your registration in the UK, it would serve you in good stead to be able to do a fellowship in the future. So in terms of additional little costs, after you finish all of that PLAB stuff, which is $3,000 plus, you then have to do some other things. So you have to, just like the USMLE, you have to essentially verify your credentials. So this is done through an online notary service called Epic Credentials. And essentially it's going to confirm that you are who you are, and it's notarized for that, as well as confirming that your degree comes from your university. So the University of the West Indies also takes their own fee for this, which is about, I think it's either 1,000 or 3,000 Jamaican dollars for them to essentially say, yeah, you got this degree that picture or scanning of the degree that you've provided to the online notary service. You did get that officially from the University of the West Indies, because you know you do have people who will try and forge those things, so they always have to check. You have to provide English proficiency again, so you can use the same letter that you use for the PLAB exam, and then just change the who it's addressed to go to the GMC and for your full registration instead of full proficiency of English for the PLAB exam. You need to get a certificate of good standing from the Medical Council of Jamaica. So that requires you to continuously register each year with Medical Council of Jamaica if you're in Jamaica, or your local medical council, and have the necessary CMEs to be able to do so. You also, if you're applying for above the level of internship, you need a internship completion letter. It may cost you money to get that, but it depends on the hospital. I worked at University Hospital of the West Indies. I didn't have to pay for it because you already submit all of your internship assessment forms to the HR area of the hospital. So they already have that information on file that you've satisfactorily completed all of your rotations, which is essentially what the letter says. It's just saying that you satisfactorily completed all of these at this institution, and you have finished internship. So that's it. You need to provide your MBBS certificate as well as your passport. So those are all the things that the GMC wants before you will be able to get your full registration. While you're applying for your full registration, you can apply for a job. So once you've passed PLAB 2, or you are due to pass PLAB 2 by May of the intake year. So the intake year for foundation program, so that's internship and SHO, which can be done as a combined internship into SHO or just SHO on its own. The intake for those is August of each year, just like how our intake is on July 1st, theirs is the first week of August. So that is, you need to be able to expect to have passed PLAB 2 by May of the year that you want to enter into a program. If you're applying for something that is above the level of SHO, i.e. a non-training post, so not a residency post, but the post, kind of like an MO post that you need to gain experience before you can enter residency, you can apply via NHS jobs. But what I'm going to go through is the ORIOLE system. So as I said before, the different entry points to go into the UK, you can do a foundation program, which is a combined F1, F2 internship SHO. You can also do the F2 standalone program, which is what I got a place in for this year. Or you can try and enter as a core trainee or an internal medicine trainee. So ORIOLE, what is that? It's essentially a national recruitment automated system. It's very, very easy to use. Essentially, it's like filling in all of the information for a CV, job website, all in one place, so you don't have to send CVs and references and things to many different hospitals. Everybody accesses this one system, and you get your offers, your updates, preferencing, everything that you do is available on this system, and it's free as part of the applications process. So just showing you some screenshots of essentially the ORIOLE website. So it's asking you, will you have completed the 24 months of postgraduate clinical experience? You don't have to, because remember, you could have just done internship alone. You don't have to do internship and SHO. It will ask you if you've done F2 or something like that anywhere else. You want to put in all of your undergraduate degrees and qualifications, as I have here. You've got to, again, just show that you've got the evidence of English proficiency. You just press yes this time instead of having to submit anything. You want to say whether you did the OET test or not. And it asks you about other things that you've done, if you've done an ACLS course or any of those kind of training courses, you put those all into the portal. So as I said, it's a centralized portal, which allows you to put everything in one place. So additions to this year, I had to do a situational judgment test, which essentially just gave me some different scenarios of things in the hospital. You have a colleague who discloses to you that they are having a drinking problem. They've been coming to work drunk for multiple days out of the week. They want to get help. You see them making many mistakes with their patients. Who do you talk to? What do you do? How do you go about it? It's essentially just ranking your response, like, oh, I'd tell my clinical supervisor, or I'd tell nobody, I'd keep it a secret, those kind of information. You can practice it online. I paid for a small fee to be able to practice some online, and it helped me 0%, because the situational judgment test that is usually done for medical graduates coming out of the UK who are entering the foundation program for the first time, coming out of medical school, those situational judgment tests are different from those from the F2 standalone program that I was applying to. So that was really annoying to me, but it was simple, it was easy to do, and I passed. So even though I hadn't practiced those scenarios before, it was simple and it was easy to do. You also have an interview. Once you've satisfactorily passed the situational judgment test, you get an interview, which essentially it's 20 minutes long. For the first 5 minutes or so, they'll ask you personal information, what are your aspirations? What kind of procedural experience do you have? All of that kind of thing, just trying to know a little bit more about your opportunity to sell yourself to the people who are doing your interview. You then get usually up to 3 clinical scenarios. So these are common clinical scenarios that you would be expected to understand and know how to respond to. So I got acute management of a myocardial infarction. I got acute management of anaphylactic response to antibiotics. And the other one was like a social situation with a vulnerable person who was being abused. So those are the kind of things that they want. They want to know what is your stepwise approach to this. So after that, after you've done both of these things, you will get ranked based on how well you perform. How well do you perform in the situational judgment test? How well do you perform in the interview? In addition to that, your general application process is also ranked. So, having research or auditing or any of those other information will improve your ranking. So after that, after you've been ranked, out of 500, 600, 700 applicants, depending on how many for each year, you then get options, which are called preferences. So I was ranked in the top 50 of this year. So based on all of my information for the application, situational judgment test, and interview. So there was all these options here that were available. And even just being, in top 50, not being in top 10 or whatever, I still had, 353 places that I didn't want to go to. So there's a lot of options in terms of placements you can go to. You rank them based on where you would most likely like to go versus least likely like to go. What's the importance of this? Once you've ranked something as something that you would like to hear from an offer, they will then make you an offer. Once you're made an offer, you have 48 hours to accept or deny that offer. So say, for example, my second choice hospital offered me a job, I would have 48 hours to accept or refuse that. But you can also opt into something called automatic upgrades. So if my first choice come back to me in, a day or so after I've accepted that second choice ranking, I can upgrade to my first choice. However, anything below my second choice is now out of the question. So if I don't get any hear back from my first choice, I will then have to take that second choice hospital. So make sure you're ranking things based on somewhere you really want to go. Don't put something that you definitely don't want to go to, because you may end up going there. So for me, I went to the F2 standalone program, which is essentially SHO. So it's 3-4 month rotations. So you can look under each thing depending on what specialties you anticipate you would like to do in the future, and you can look for the best fit for you. So if you want to do surgery, maybe you want to do trauma and orthopedics, followed by general surgery, followed by urology. Or maybe there's trauma orthopedics, or say for instance, if you want to do neurosurgery, you might want to do trauma, then do spinal trauma surgery, and then straight neurosurgery. So there are different options that are available. I personally want to do internal medicine. Specifically, I want to do neurology in the future. So the options I did, there was no neurology that was available. So I'm doing acute internal medicine, general internal medicine, and geriatric medicine. So those are my 3-4 month rotations that I will be starting from August. So that's just a general overview so you can kind of understand it. In terms of the tracking process for the application, it's very simple, easy, laid out really well. Once you've completed each part, it literally comes up red like a traffic light, green like a traffic light system. So you're set to go. So that's essentially what my application process looked like. So as I said, choosing programs depends on your aspirations for the future. You've got to concentrate on trying to make links. If you want to get into a surgery program in the next year, 2 years, you need to concentrate on making links with people who would be good references for you working in surgery. You may need to compensate on what program you choose to be closer to family. So I compensated this year to be closer to family. As I mentioned before, I just had a baby in April, so I want to be close to home. So it really depends on you whether you want to apply to somewhere closer to where your accommodation is or where people live. If you don't have any commitments to anybody, then perhaps you could go anywhere. You could follow your program choice instead. And obviously it's a personal choice as well. You can choose what you decide you want to do. So what about research? As I mentioned, it was mentioned in the USMLE one yesterday. I didn't have any significant research experience, just, helping with like data gathering and stuff for other people's research, but it does help your application. It's looked on very favorably. It does improve the ranking of your application, but it's not essential. As I said, I didn't have any significant research experience and I still ranked in the top 50. So don't worry about it. Don't stress yourself out. If you don't find the time to be able to do these things, don't worry about it. Concentrate on doing well in MBBS. If you're still a medical student, or concentrate on making those clinical links with people who would be good references for you if you are postgraduate. So your letters of recommendation, you will pick 3 references. So it's important that even if you're a medical student, that you start to build relationships with consultants and mentors. You want people who have seen you. You don't want people who maybe saw you for like a month or 2 months. You want somebody who really has seen how you operate and more so in a clinical capacity than in academic experience. Remember, it's a clinical role, clinical job that you're going for. So therefore, that is way more important than just pure academia. So residency now. So I've talked about PLAB, I've talked about what you do after PLAB, I've talked about the different entry levels that you can do. For residency now, it really depends on what area you want to specialize in. It's governed by the Royal Colleges, which there are many, depending on different specialties. The cost of the exams differs depending on which Royal College you are affiliated with, and the number of steps and stages also depends on which Royal College you are affiliated with. And you can find that information on the Royal College websites. So for medicine, you're looking at the Royal College of Physicians, ONG, Royal College of Obstetricians and Gynecologists. For surgery, you're looking for the Royal College of Surgery, but England. You may want to go to Scotland if you want, but I've heard that is usually an easier exam, and many people choose and opt to do that one. But from London, that is the more prestigious. And then pediatrics, you have Royal College of Pediatrics and Child Health. And there are other ones such as anesthesiology and such like that. And why am I mentioning these? Because these exams are essential for you to gain a place in a residency program. So yes, another set of exams is required. So you're probably wondering, why would I do PLAB if I just have to do another set of exams? Of which I will go through after I explain to you where you can get this information and what the structure of the different programs and stuff is. So the general exam structures, as I mentioned, are different depending on which specialty you wish to do. So for medicine, you have a Part 1, Part 2, and PACES, which is an OSCE exam. For ONG, it has a Part 1, Part 2, Part 3. Surgery, Part A, Part B. And pediatrics has 3 parts to the first part, which is the theory exams, and then has an OSCE as well. So you need to go on the different Royal Colleges to really see in depth what is required for each one of these, and the general outline and how long you think it would take to study. So this is a sample pathway. Say, for example, if you wish to do cardiology. So as I was mentioning, there are multiple different entry points to the different programs. So I am currently in the green box. I've done 1 year of internship overseas, and then I'm going to be doing 1 year UK standalone FY2. So that's where I am. After that, depending on how much I like or don't like acute internal medicine, I may do the 3 years of acute medicine, or I may do 3 years of internal medicine. And that's where you're an internal medicine trainee. During that time, you're expected to do the first 2 parts of MRCP if it is that you're doing medicine. I'm using this as an example. And then when you do that, I would then enter into higher specialty training, which for me would be neurology. So when you do come out, you're going to be not just an internist, you would be an internist with a special interest in neurology, and you may even super subspecialize on top of that. So say, for example, you like inflammatory diseases of the brain, you can have a subspecialty, because everything, including essentially your fellowship, is kind of all mashed into one. So it does look like a longer process compared to, say, for example, residency in the US. However, remember, this is an incorporative program. It includes you doing stuff like research projects and your fellowship and your higher training all in one, rather than finishing your residency and then having to do 2-3 years of fellowship after that. So this is an example for medicine. I have a similar example here for surgery. As I mentioned before, there are multiple different ways that you can enter into the program. You can either come straight as a finish MBBS and you enter that 2-year UK foundation program, or you can do internship and then come over. If you do internship and SHO, you can actually enter where the orange box is. You can enter into the core surgical training once you're demonstrating that you're doing the MRCS exams. So, you know, again, similar pathway, and all of these can be found on the Savvy IMG, essentially international medical graduate. So that website gives you all that information. Here's one for the obstetricians and gynecologists that we have amongst us. So again, same thing, you got exams that you need to do at specific stages during our program. So you'll notice that all of the blue boxes is essentially what you would consider residency, or you would become a registrar. But it's a progressive program, right? So there are constant assessments which will take you to the next stage, to the next stage, to the next stage. And then last one I put for pediatrics as well. Included in this, sometimes in the blue part, between ST4 to 8, if say for example you wanted to do pediatric cardiology, that would be when you would get more information and learning and training about that, and you can then graduate as a consultant pediatrician and pediatric cardiologist. As I said, everything is kind of squished into one. So as I said before, you're probably wondering, why do PLAB if you have to do other exams? So it really depends, where do you see yourself ending up? If you see yourself ending up in Jamaica or any of the other Caribbean islands, perhaps doing a residency in the UK is not for you. Perhaps you wish to just do a fellowship. So as I mentioned before, you can do your PLAB exam from you exit medical school, which, you know, is when you're going to have the most amount of information, rather than, you know, you're now a senior resident in pediatrics and now you're having to look back at ONG, surgery, understanding research, all of these different concepts that have long gone out of your head, right? It may be more difficult for you then to go back to PLAB and look to doing the PLAB exam. But when I did my PLAB exam, there was quite a lot of people who are probably at the level of a senior resident or even a consultant level who were doing PLAB because they are able to do a fellowship once they've gained their GMC full licensing, as I mentioned. Hopefully everybody is following. Some people, because of the prestige that is associated with being a member of the Royal College or a fellow of the Royal College, may choose to do those exams instead, and that's fine. It's not a problem at all. The reason I personally chose to do PLAB is that it allows me to now work in the UK, to earn in pounds, to be with my family, as well as gain experience of working in the NHS. Because when you're applying to these different residency programs, it is beneficial that you have a level of experience having worked in the NHS. Your application is looked on more favorably than somebody who is just trying to enter the program from abroad. It's much harder to do that than it is to be in the system and get into the system. So I've put a number of different online resources. So the Savvy IMG is a really good one. These are just the various other resources for the different Royal Colleges in terms of finding out about the different exams that are available. And these are the online resources that are available to do PLAB. You can also find on Past Medicine and Past Test, you can also find study resources for the other Royal College exams as well. All of these require a subscription, which are usually for, between 3 to 5 months. It can be, between 20, 30. For the Royal College exams, the subscriptions are significantly more expensive because of the prestige that follows those particular examinations. Once you're a member of the Royal College of Physicians, for example, that it becomes letters that go after your name, okay, which obviously is an attractive point that most doctors want, and so therefore the prestige. With the prestige comes the cost that is associated with taking those exams, which also significantly take more time to study for, but you can find that information, more information about those on the Royal College websites. So that's all I have to say on that. So I think we're going to have a 7-minute break where you can put your various questions, you can put them in the chat, you can write them on the thing on YouTube. I'm sure either Xavier or Devon will explain that now. So thank you
All right,
very much
thank
for
you.
having me, and I will do my best to answer any questions that you have.
Okay, thank you very much, Dr. Rochelle Smith. I'm here, Xavier Brown, and instead of 7 minutes, given the late start, we'll give you guys about 2 minutes or so to send the questions over, well, here on Zoom, as well as YouTube, and I'll attend to both of them and ask Dr. Smith. Well, thank you again, Dr. Smith.
Hypr Community is a social learning network. It brings together the power and convenience of social media and superimposes it onto a learning management system. For most of you, it will be easy to recognize how similar the community's features are to your favorite social media sites, except we have dedicated this website to facilitate learning in a comfortable and familiar setting. Standard features of Hypr Community include posting to your timeline, private messaging, following other users, and connecting. Users will be able to create private and public groups and forums to join others that match their individual goals for connectivity and learning. We are excited to be partnering with faculties, consultants, residents, doctors, and other professionals to bring you groups and live topical forums that provide rich content that are moderated by the best in each field, providing second-to-none information for your benefit. Hypr Community will foster networking that will bring together faculties, local students, regional students, and professionals onto a platform dedicated solely to your success. Best of all, it is free for all students. Go now to www.hyprcommunity.com and sign up today. Hypr Community. Learn, grow together. Hypr Community is brought to you by Hypr Academics Jamaica Limited.
Okay, guys, so I'll be taking the first question from Zoom. So, Dr. Smith, what are the advantages to being a UK citizen for getting into programs for both SHO and residency?
Okay, so as I mentioned before, I am a UK citizen, but it didn't confer any benefit to me other than having the passport, so I didn't have to pay the visa to come over to do the exams for the SHO. Right, because it's more based on where do you get your primary medical qualification from. So I got mine from Jamaica, so I'm considered a foreign medical graduate. So still had to go through the same process as anyone else. But the program in terms of applying at the F2 level is open for anybody. They don't say, oh, there's only 40 spaces for international graduates. It's whoever scores and does well in the interviews. Once there are jobs available, you'll get a job. So for that. For the residency now, the residency, again, it's a national recruitment, and you can look on each year they post based on the different subspecialties. They post how many places were available, how many people applied, and how many persons got a place. And based on that, there are what you call competition ratios. So say, for example, neurosurgery, say there was only, for the whole country, there are 300 places, 2,000 people applied, you get a competition ratio based on that. So it's always good to look on the competition ratios of the year before so that you can make a calculated decision. You know, for example, you may really want to just do a residency in the UK, but you're not sure what in. You can look at that to try see what thing are you, if you apply to it, are you going to be likely to be most successful in. Obviously, those with a lower competition ratio, you are likely to be more, you're likely to be more successful in getting into those programs. But, you know, if it's not something you really want to do, it's going to be hard for you to switch because you still have to go through the whole process again. So better you apply to something that you actually really want to do so you don't look like you dropped out of a program. Yeah, so that's basically, it doesn't really confer any advantage because, you know, it's really an international, it's more open to international people across the board. There is no set amount of places for international students. So I hope that answers your question.
Okay, thank you very much. Another question is, how does the UK interview process differ from the US process?
Okay, so in terms of the interview process, as I mentioned, it's a very short thing. It's usually done online. It's 20 minutes long. That's the only information I can give in terms of the interview process for the foundation programs. It's obviously different for residency level, of which I don't have the experience to be able to explain at this time because I haven't reached that level. So it would be incorrect for me to try and offer that opinion. Merely from things that I've read. I know that that one is obviously naturally a more serious interview, which is talking about your ambitions within the field and is a lot more involved. For the interview process for the foundation programs, they merely asked me, you know, where do I see myself in 5 years' time or 10 years' time? What specialty am I looking towards doing? What procedural experience, so, you know, can you take blood, can you put in a catheter, can you do a chest tube, all of those things. And it's all just one 20-minute interview. And then once that's over, based on how well you did, especially with the clinical scenarios, remember they already know a lot about you already from your application. So based on how well you do with your response to those clinical scenarios, within that 20-minute gap, you hope to get through 3 clinical scenarios in the 15 minutes that you have, you will be ranked based on your responses. So that's essentially how the interview process works.
Okay, so another question is, do you have to pay for the interviews, and is it only one interview overall?
Okay, so as I mentioned, yep, it's one interview for the whole process for that, the foundation program application. And as I mentioned, also the whole ORIOLE system in terms of the national recruitment is free. You don't pay for interview at all because you already paid for your PLAB exams and you're going to have to pay for your GMC licensing anyway. So you don't have to pay for the ORIOLE application.
Okay, thank you. Another question is, so you mentioned that you applied to the F2 standalone and you would have needed proof to say you would have completed internship. So for those of us who have completed SHO and would like to apply for the higher position, which would be the equivalent of the MO, would a completion letter of SHO be required for same? And for the MO equivalent, would you be assigned to one specialty for the time before getting into the residency?
All right, that's a really good question. So yes, you would have to show evidence that you've completed both internship as well as SHO. So they need to see that you've done the necessary, essentially they want to see that you've rotated through medicine, you've rotated through surgery. They don't care so much about pediatrics and obstetrics and gynecology because in the UK, when you are working as an intern, it's your first year is mainly split between medicine and surgery, whether that's through subspecialties or through general for both of those. And then in your F2 year, as you heard for mine, it's subspecialties of main headings. So I'm doing medicine, so I'm doing acute internal medicine, general internal medicine, and geriatric medicine. In terms of for the MO equivalent, you're applying for specific jobs. So if you look on the NHS jobs website, you will see the various vacancy levels. So you can get a post which is for 6 months or for a year. Usually it's in that kind of ballpark figure, and you're applying for something in your particular area of interest. So say you want to do hematology and oncology, you'll be looking for a job in hematology or oncology at that level, whether that's usually as a core trainee is what it's described as. So that's it, yeah.
Okay, so we're going to take some questions from YouTube. So someone is asking, if I only want to do a fellowship for my subspecialty in the UK, she's asking if she would need to sit PLAB and then apply directly to the relevant Royal College for fellowship post-DM.
Okay, yeah. So in order to do the fellowship, as you mentioned, as the person has rightly mentioned there, you go through the Royal Colleges to get those fellowship opportunities. You can also look through things such as LinkedIn and NHS jobs as well, because fellowship opportunities are also demonstrated or available in terms of the publication of those available posts. You don't have to do PLAB. That's what I'm saying. There are basically two ways you could do it. You could say, for example, you'd want to do a fellowship in rheumatology, which is a subspecialty of medicine. You may choose that you want to do the Royal College exams because it's more prestigious. You become a fellow of the Royal College of Physicians, and you can put that after your name, and when you come back to your country, you have those letters and stuff after your name. So you may choose to do that, which is absolutely fine. As many consultants, you will notice that they have those letters after their name. However, what I'm saying is that what is available, I know definitely for Royal College of Physicians, as an international medical graduate, you can do PLAB now as a proxy for you to be able to get your GMC licensing and then apply for your fellowship through the Royal Colleges. So you don't necessarily have to do the Royal College exams. The decision is up to you. As I said, if you are a senior resident in anesthesia, it may be a longer process for you to then look back over, pediatrics, ONG, medicine and surgery questions to be able to pass PLAB. That may be more time consuming for you to have to go back in the archives and reignite that knowledge than it is for you to just go ahead and do your Royal College of Anesthesia exams, which is obviously more in your ballpark and the things that you're studying every day. So that decision, I can't say which is the best decision to make. I chose for myself to do the PLAB so that I could gain experience of working in the UK, so that it's more favorable for me to try and get into a program in the future, basically.
Okay, thank you. Another question is, oh, it's gone. Okay. So if you're a student at UWI Mona or UWI from Cayman taking the PLAB route and, well, they want to do dermatology straight out of MBBS, what is the level of difficulty and time frame for that?
Okay, so I don't know specifically how long it's going to take for you to become a specialist in dermatology. As I mentioned before, you have to have shown a significant level of competency of either internship, SHO. You won't be able to exit MBBS and go straight into a dermatology residency program, not in the UK. So likely, if it falls under medicine, which I think it does, you will have to show that you've done internship, SHO, you will have to work 3 years as a core medicine trainee and then enter dermatology residency program, which I'm unsure how long it is, but the average, say for example, like cardiology is about 5 years. So it takes you, on top of SHO, it takes you about 8 years. But when you finish that, you have, you would have finished both medicine as well as your subspecialty, and you may even do super specialization on top of that during your time in residency. But you can look at the Savvy IMG, look on that page. You may find specific for your program, or you can just simply type into Google dermatology NHS pathway UK, and it will show you how long it will take you to get there. So I hope that helps.
Another question is, so would you say that the UK specialization is more for persons who want to stay, live and work in the UK, and not those who might want to return to Jamaica after?
Okay, so it really depends, right? So if you wish to return to Jamaica after, you can do your full residency in the UK and then go back to Jamaica or whichever country you came from. Afterwards, it just may be more difficult for you because you will be competing against local people who have done the DM exams, who other consultants and hospitals, etc., will know those persons. For example, a university hospital, the West Indies is more likely to hire somebody who has graduated from their DM program into a consultant level post than taking somebody who studied for 8 years outside of Jamaica and is trying now to come into the program. But obviously, if you do something which maybe there is nobody in that. So say, for example, you do immunology or something, and there's one person who does immunology and that person is retiring, there will obviously be an opening and they're not going to refuse you if you're somebody that is needed. So it really depends. It's not just for persons who want to live and work in the UK. It's just, it may be harder for you to then integrate into the system after you finish your residency in the UK. That's what I've been told, at least.
Okay, another question is, the exams for the Royal Colleges that you were speaking about, are these entry exams or the final?
I will assume that the person is talking about entry into residency. So, for example, for medicine, in order to enter into for me, a neurology residency program, I would have to have passed part 1 and part 2 of the member of the Royal College of Physicians. So I would have to have passed those. During my training, usually during the first 2 years of training, I would then do the OSCE element, which is PACES. You then have an exit level exam, which is becoming a fellow of the Royal College of Physicians, fellow of the Royal College of Surgeons, etc., which is the FRCS that you see after lots of surgeons' names, or FRCP that you see after medical consultant names. So there is an exit level exam as well, which forms an integrated part of your residency program. It's not that you have to take an exam to exit residency and do an exam to for the Royal Colleges. It's the exit level examination is fellow of Royal College of whatever it is that you're doing.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Smith. Just one final call for questions from either Zoom or YouTube. If not, I want to thank you very much, Dr. Smith, for taking time out of your super busy schedule. One more question. So with regards to research, not being the author or co-author on the paper will not negatively affect your application. For example, it is not a requirement.
Right. So as I said before, it's not a requirement, but it is looked on favorably. So say, for example, you're a co-author or even an author of a paper and you put that in your application on ORIOLE, your ranking, once you've put in all of these things, is likely to be higher than somebody who did not have that. And it also comes across, because you're going to talk about it in your interview as well, they're going to ask you, have you ever been involved in research? Have you ever been involved in auditing? So you can describe that. So that will increase your points and therefore your ranking. But if you don't have it, it's not going to negatively affect your application. As I mentioned, I had helped out with some data entering for research papers, but it was not my main focus. My main focus was passing MBBS and doing very well in MBBS. So I didn't have that. And also we don't really do auditing like they do in the UK. So I didn't have that experience, but I still managed to rank in top 50. So it doesn't really negatively affect your application.
Okay, another question is, just to clarify, once you've completed the DM in Jamaica, you can always, once you have PLAB, of course, do the Royal College exams and then just do the fellowship?
So based on the information that came out of the Royal College of Physicians, I don't know if it's the same for the other Royal Colleges, but if you do, once you finish, say for example, I chose to do a DM in Jamaica and I finished DM2 in internal medicine. If I had done PLAB from my exited medical school, once I'm paying my GMC registration fee yearly, and doing the necessary things to be able to re-register each year, once you have a GMC license, you can then apply to do a fellowship. You don't necessarily have to do the Royal College exams. They had mentioned when they came to Jamaica that you can either go the PLAB route or you can go the MRCP route. But as I said before, it depends what you want. If the MRCP, if you're deciding to try do a fellowship later on in your career and you've not done the PLAB exam, it may be more beneficial for you to do an MRCP exam, which is towards your specialty, and therefore will look better in terms of your name as a doctor. Because once you do PLAB, there's nothing that goes after your name. It's just an entry-level exam. Right, so it really depends on what you want to do. But you can find more information about this on the Royal College websites in terms of how to get into a fellowship. That information is there.
So I believe these are the two final questions. So
Sure.
Can you go over the entry levels once more, F2, etc., after you do your PLAB exams, please?
Sure. So once you do your PLAB exams, perhaps I can go back to the slide. Perhaps that would make it a little bit more helpful. All right. Right. So once you enter once you finish MBBS, you can either do foundation program, which means you do a combined 2 years, so internship then SHO as one thing, which is called the foundation program in the UK. So you can do that. Or if you choose to stay in Jamaica or your country of origin for a year to do internship there, say for example you're tied to a contract or something because you had a scholarship, you could work in whichever country you are, and then you could enter at the F2 standalone, which is much easier to do that because there are quite a few placements, as I showed you there, nearly 400 placements that were available to me by entering at that F2 standalone level. Above that level, the amount of available jobs becomes smaller. So it may be harder for you to get a job above that level, which is why I chose to go in at the F2 standalone, even though I did SHO from July 2020 to end of January 2021. So I have some SHO experience. I did not finish it because I went on maternity leave. But even if I had finished it, I may have still gone in at the F2 standalone program. If it wasn't for COVID, my plan was to finish internship and just go straight into the F2 standalone program, but that didn't work because of COVID. And what may also be helpful for the person to look at is the sample entry requirements. So look at the green box. These are the different ways that you can enter into. So where it has international medical graduate, if you also put PLAB exam there, You then have the different foundation training that you must go through, or you may have done that overseas. So you can either enter at the green box, or you can enter at the orange box if you've done internship and SHO already. But it's harder to enter in the orange box than it is to enter in the green box. But once you've done the green box, it's much easier for you to then progress to the orange box, and then you will have at least, 3-4 years of experience working in the NHS, so it's much easier for you to then get a placement once, it's not a very competitive placement or course or whatever it is that you want to do for residency. It may be easy for you to then transition into that blue box. Hope that makes the person understand. No problem.
Right, and the final question is, after MBB, well, two more, I promise. You're right. So after MBBS, what steps must I take to pursue neurosurgery? I plan on doing PLAB to go to the UK. When is the best time to do PLAB as well?
Okay, so let me answer when's the best time to do PLAB. I personally would say do PLAB as close to finishing MBBS as you can, because the further you go from finishing MBBS, the more information you are losing, right? You can't retain all that information forever. So as I said, I finished in June 10th, we found out about it, that we passed MBBS. I had an exam booked for the 28th. Well, and I wanted to book the exam for June 28th. However, there was no places available when we eventually, because you can't apply to do PLAB until you have your primary medical qualification, right? So since ours came through in June, it was kind of a bit too late. All the places were taken up by the time I wanted to apply to that one. So I ended up having to do it at the next sitting, which was in November, which was fine. So I would say perhaps do it like that, where it's close to when you finish MBBS. It's not a big deal if you do it later than that. I just think it's more beneficial. In terms of the specifics for pursuing neurosurgery, you would have to look on the Savvy IMG and look under neurosurgery and see if you can find the pathway as to go through that. Each different subspecialty has its own pathway as to how is the best way to enter it, etc., etc. I couldn't possibly retain all that information in terms of how to go for each individual program. So I think you just look at either on the Savvy IMG or look on the Royal College of Surgeons website to try to find that information.
And the last question is, just to confirm, is it not possible to do the MRCP exam and go into the Royal College after doing SHO in Jamaica?
Trying to understand what that person is saying. I think they're asking, once they finish SHO, if they do the Royal College exams, will they be able to go straight into residency? So most programs have this, require you to do this orange box in the middle, the core training, because what they were finding is that people who were entering, say, for example, a cardiology residency, after a year or two, were realizing actually it's not cardiology they wanted to do. So what the core training does, it allows you to rotate. It's kind of like DM1, rotate through the various different subspecialties, find out what you like, and also gain the experience, the necessary core values, core skills that are required. It also gives you the time to pass your Royal College exams at the same time. So yeah, you after SHO, even if you do MRCP, MRCS, you're not going to be able to enter a residency straight away. You're going to have to do the core training first, and then enter into the higher specialty training.
Right, so that was the final question, Dr. Smith. So I want to thank everyone who has joined us, whether it was just today or the past 2 days, on Zoom as well as YouTube. Remember, if it is that you missed any portion of either session, you can always re-watch them. So subscribe to our YouTube channel, literally. And you can watch them. Remember, you can follow us on Instagram as well. So thank you also again, Dr. Smith. And Devon, are you there? No, you're not.
Yes, I am.
Okay. Oh, you don't have anything to say. So, yeah, so thank you again, guys, and you'll hear from us. Okay.